Hey everyone, it's Trevor back with Roy from Streamers Become Human. This week
Hi
we're
everyone.
gonna talk about remakes and remasters versus new entries to series, as opposed to our previous videos that were game focused specifically, and the last one that was comparisons in gaming.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something we've talked about on the podcast a bunch. And so we'll be trying to explore some different perspectives on this.
So the big discussion here is going to be whether or not we think remakes slash remasters are worth it as opposed to just having a new entry into the series. And a prime example is like so again we talked about a couple videos ago was Don't Make Cry.
Yeah, we're both huge fans as well, so that's like kind of a perfect one. Yeah, I think um with it's tricky because one of the things I was saying before the video is that like where I'm primarily a PC gamer, I forget what remasters are good for. Like it's like, there are a lot of gamers that they maybe they didn't get every entry of a console. So maybe their first PlayStation was PS4 or whatever. And so like remastering games for that were originally PS3 games for PS4 makes some sense because then it exposes it to like a new audience that otherwise wouldn't have played it. Whereas for me and PC, I forget that's a thing because we don't have to really worry about backwards compatibility. I'm like, why did they remaster this game? I can already play it fine. But then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's why they remastered it. Is so so the new generation of console gamers can play it. And I think fundamentally that's what determines for me whether a remaster is like a good idea is will it actually introduce the game to new players or won't it?
And to add on to the points you were making, I think another one would just be accessibility. Because, like, as you were
Mhm.
saying, if someone jumped in on PS4 and wasn't able to play, like, Ratchet and Clank, the ones on, like, PS3 or whatever, they might be remastered and, accessible on PS4 because they remade them. So then it's like, instead of having to buy two different consoles, they only have to get the one and then just get the games that were remastered and brought over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think like that's happening a lot now with like Switch games. Like a great example, like all these Mario games are coming out now for Switch, right? So it's good for people who, like me, didn't grow up with Nintendo, right? Um, and so this will be like the first time I'm ever playing those games.
And you would say that made it easier instead of having to like scour the internet for like a Nintendo 64 that worked and like the cartridge and
Exactly,
the
because
whole
retro
the whole
gaming
step
is
the whole step process. Yeah, it's not.
yeah, like retro gaming is expensive. Like if you want to do it on original hardware, it's
Yeah,
expensive. Um, Obviously, one of the things about PC gaming is that emulation is a part of it. With certain consoles more than others. Obviously, with PS3, PS3 emulation has been historically really hard. So it's really good when PS3 games get remakes because then we can play them and won't have to worry about getting a PS3 to do it. And this, well, I mean, we talked about the Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. That had a similar effect, right?
yes. It and that
Where
one I
we
think
got a PC
also
version.
got to like bring in new people because like it was in a time when there wasn't like a whole lot of Devil May Cry stuff going on. So it was like, oh hey, here's the special edition, and then like people were like, oh what's this, and then like new people may have picked it up.
That's a really good point. Actually, that's a great point that I didn't even think about, which is that it's not just new console generations. It's like sometimes you just miss a game. Like in one generation, you just miss a game and forget about it. And then it's like when it gets a remaster, you're like, oh damn, like maybe this is the time for me to pick that up now, and get to playing it again.
Yeah, especially if the game was like a launch game or a launch title, then like you try to play it 5 years after the fact, and it's like, I like these graphics are dated, and like the gameplay is kind of like man, like
Yeah,
this and
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
So then like you just wait for the remaster, and it's better.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely we're in the boat somewhat of remakes slash remasters being good for like people and the companies and gamers in general, but
Definitely. Yeah.
there's also two sides to every coin. So it's
Hmm.
there are certain games that ultimately don't really need remasters. Like, I feel like Skyrim is a prime example. Like, that's been remade, remastered, imported, exported to like every single console imaginable.
Well, that's exactly right, and especially when you mentioned at the beginning about the talking about in the video. There's a certain level of remakes, remasters versus new entries in the series. You know what I mean? Like at some point,
Yes.
you just want a new entry. Like they didn't remake Oblivion a million times. They were like, okay, well, we just want to come out with Skyrim now and make Skyrim, and then people are gonna. You don't need to play Oblivion to play Skyrim. And likewise, I'm sure you won't have needed to play Skyrim to play The Elder Scrolls 6, because that's not how that series works.
Yes, they're not like chronologically like, oh, you have to know this to do this, and I was like, no, it's like they're like Easter eggs in there, sure, but like you don't have to. It's not like a big downfall if you don't play it.
Yeah, exactly. And those remasters of Skyrim, they're not new imaginings of Sky. They're not really remakes, right? They're strictly remasters. They're ports, right?
Yes.
So it's not like when they remade Final Fantasy VII. It's a whole new game and a whole new experience. It's like,
I mean, that one jumped from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 4, so that's almost
exactly,
20 years of a gap right there. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge difference, and so that to me is more worthy. But yeah, when you do Skyrim a million times, it's kind of, I think it gets tiresome and unnecessary. And of course, the very worst thing you can do with a remaster is add bugs that weren't in the original. BioShock is the #1 offender of this. It's like the original. Like there are people who will tell you, and I'm one of them. Play the original. Don't play the remaster.
Yes. So I bought those games on the Steam Summer Sale, and I remember I was in Warriors chat, and I was like, why the hell would anyone ever play the originals? And then you specifically said, don't play the remakes. They're full of bugs. Play the originals.
Exactly, yeah. The good news is the remakes come with the originals, so you can still play the originals even if you buy the remakes. But yeah, it's the idea that there was a problem introduced in a remaster, I think, is really that's when a remaster is bad, because like we talk about how new players can find a series, right? Oh, now new players can discover Devil May Cry, but like you're gonna put those new players off if you release a bad product. Now they're never gonna want to play the series. If their
first
right?
introduction is like a buggy remake, then it's like, are all the games like this? Like this is trash.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why would we play
they're
this?
not gonna waste their time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it also has like a negative impact on, I guess, the studio too, because it's like you had all the working functions and models and stuff, and it's like all you had to do was just like upgrade the like I obviously I'm not like a game designer or anything, or I'm not a programmer, so I don't know if it's that easy. Like as I'm saying, it's like, oh, just upgrade the textures and like stuff, and then like everything should work theoretically.
Yeah, but you're no, I understand totally what you're saying, because you're starting with a base product, and it's like if you're making upgrades to that, you shouldn't. At no point in a remaster should you make a downgrade to an existing thing. It's crazy that people manage that.
A quick comparison, I guess, would be like if say you have a PC built, but it's kind of old, and then like you go to upgrade that PC. When you upgrade that PC, it should still be working and stuff. It shouldn't like be plugged in and like everything on, and then like something happens because like there's bugs because you like upgraded it wrong. It's like, no, like where the stuff goes, and like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should be very, very straightforward, especially when the remaster is a straightforward. Like I understand if you're making a total remake from the ground up and now there's new bugs because it's a different team and a different process, but the BioShock remasters aren't that ambitious as remasters. It's not like they're that much better looking than the originals even, right? A lot of games, that are, ported over because they're at the end of a console life cycle, right? Whereas, you talked about like Last of Us and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because when a new console comes out, there's always games that are released for both. I think the new Spider-Man is the Miles Morales. That's coming out on both, right? PS4 and PS5.
That's a dual launch, as well as Cyberpunk, because that got pushed back 8 times, and then
yes, yeah.
I imagine anything around that time frame of like November. I'm assuming Valhalla.
Valhalla, yeah.
Will also be one of those.
Yeah, that stands to reason, I think, because they're still because there's a lot of people, especially with how hard it was to get a PS5, and it's
Yes.
always hard at the beginning of a console generation to get the console day one, right? So, there's still be a lot of people who want because it's a launch title, it's going to come out on the launch of the console. There's a lot of people who are going to want the game, but are going to want to wait till the console's cheaper. I know a lot of people who wait till like maybe a year into a console life cycle and then get the console.
Yeah, then they'll be on sale on like Black Friday, or like they'll have a random sale for like the anniversary of that like console or something.
Exactly. And there'll be a better sense of, and then there'll be more games out and stuff like that because obviously
at first it's like you have slim picking because like if you're not gonna play every single game that's out on launch, then you will only have like one or two, like a handful of games. Like it's
exactly. So there's a large market for for new games that are coming out on the previous generation of consoles.
So I guess a factor for remakes / remasters would be the companies trying to target like nostalgic feels and like getting back to childhood games and like games grew up, like the games people grew up with and such.
Yep.
And we can see the evidence and stuff like when they did a full remaster of Spyro. Or I guess it was a would you call that a remake or a remaster?
Remake, I think. Remake, because that was so from the ground up with Spyro.
Yeah. They also did it with the Crash Bandicoot series. As we mentioned before, they did it with Final Fantasy VII. Another game they did was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX. And obviously the Resident Evil 2 was the
famous RE2 remake. And this is interesting because it's not just because we talk about console generations. It's like, oh, I came in on PS4, so I missed the PS3 games. This is like another thing. These are like real life generations, right? It's like, oh, I wasn't born when that came out, kind of thing. Like for some people, like a lot of people weren't born when Final Fantasy VII came out, right?
Yeah.
So now they get to play that. So it's like the super version of the generational gap.
Yeah, basically. And then with stuff like Resident Evil 2, we personally know a bunch of people who got into the series solely based on the remake.
Yeah, exactly. Like they started with the remake and they were so enamored by it that they are now Resident Evil fans. Like they went back and they played like sometimes RE1 or they played 4, 5, 6. I think most people waited for the RE3 remake because they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But
at this rate, there's a pattern that you can see with most games. It's like, oh, this is being remastered, and then like next year it's like, oh, the next one is, and it's like, all right, well, I'm guessing the next year is going to be the next one after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's definitely there's a nostalgia factor involved in those where people remember playing them as kids, or there's like the, oh wow, I missed that because I wasn't in the right generation to play it factor.
And then so not always is it the bad thing that things get remade the way Resident Evil does, because Resident Evil Remake actually helped a lot of other games like Devil May Cry 5, which is made in the RE2 engine. So they had to essentially do that first in order to prep the making of Devil May Cry 5.
Exactly, yeah. And because remakes are, for all intents and purposes, they're new games,
Yeah, like the foundation is still there, but like they're still building it from the ground up because it's not just like cut and paste and like clean it up. They had to like for all intensive purposes, it's not like look at the differences between Tomb Raider on PS1 and then like the rebooted Tomb Raider now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're completely different. They play completely differently, and like just like people can take inspiration, developers can take inspiration and tools from games coming out. They can absolutely take the same thing from remakes, just like DMC5 did. Was able to, and I think you and I we had a whole video on how much we like DMC5, but suffice to say that we really like the engine. I think the engine ended up being perfect, and it's on a like unrelated note, it's also kind of poetic that Resident Evil and DMC have another
Yeah, like another
connect.
tie-in, because like that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were originally supposed to be, DMC was originally supposed to be a Resident Evil game. So,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and then one other thing I want to mention is that uh, the RE2 engine actually being used to make the new Monster Hunter Switch game, which is Monster Hunter. I should know this, but I don't.
It begins with an R, doesn't it? Does it not? Um,
Monster Hunter Rise.
Rise, Monster Hunter Rise. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that is the engine they're using. So not on this one remake or like remaster they did is already helping Capcom make their next couple games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that makes me really excited. Like because I love the engine and I would love to see more games in it.
Yeah, the engine for RE2 is great. It's like it looks beautiful. Like it's astonishing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and anytime you have an engine that can support like a proper action game like Devil May Cry with all that goes on in that, like it's amazing what's involved in that game. I think you have a good engine on your hands.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be running that into the ground because like I don't think that one's gonna be outdated anytime soon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
So for those of you who are watching this video, we'd like to know your opinion on this topic. Are you on the side of you're okay with remakes as long as they eventually get to what RE did, basically, and that prompts multiple games being spawned from that?
Mhm.
Or are you on the side of you rather just not say anything for 8 years and then suddenly the company come back and be like, hey, we're making this game that's a sequel to this game that we released 8 years ago?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like what Kingdom Hearts did, because like any Kingdom Hearts fan will know that the gap between 2 and 3 was like 14 years. Now granted there were games in between, but most casual fans will not know that there's Birth by Sleep, 352 Days by 2 or whatever, and then like the 9 other games in between.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what are your thoughts on? Are you more of a as long as they do it right and do remasters, it's okay, or are you more of a I'd rather just wait it out and then like get a new entry in X amount of time later?
Me personally,
Yes.
I would say actually, I would say that I'm on the side of remasters, in the hopes that it gets new people into the thing. Because like I say, I think the thing for years is I didn't get it because it's like on PC we don't worry about that sort of thing, backwards compatible. But then my friends who were on just console would say, oh, that PS3 game, I never would have played that if they didn't remake it on PS4, right? And I was like, oh, okay, now I get it now. So now this guy's a fan and he'll get all the games in the future. So I would say overall I'm on the side of remasters. Yeah.
Yeah, as would I, because it like again all the points you made too. It's like it can have potential to bring new people into the series. B, it's more accessible for like if you don't want to have to constantly switch between 2 different consoles or one of them breaks or something. And then 3, it's like if this is a stepping stone for the company to make something else that's better, then I'm all for it. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
so yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments below, and then don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
And we'll be back. We'll be back sometime soon with another video.
Yes. All right. See you guys.
Take it easy.